Deion Sanders and Colorado had their spring game on Saturday. I'm going to tell you my 5 biggest takeaways, starting with the fact that FAU transfer LeJontay Wester is going to be a star at receiver for Colorado this season.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, tune in every single day so you could stay up to date on everything that's happening with the Colorado Buffaloes. Like I said, on Saturday, they had their spring game. I watched it multiple times and came away with 5 major takeaways, and you guys won't want to miss it. So, starting with LeJontay Wester, the FAU transfer that had over 100 catches this past season for the Owls is now coming in, and I think he's going to emerge as the favorite target for Deion Sanders. And that's obviously with Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn in the mix. There was something about the way he was targeting Wester. Wester was always open. Wester was always where Shedeur needed him to be. And he finished the day with an impressive stat line. They didn't really keep stats for everyone, or they didn't have like stats available for everyone, but they did mark down Wester for having 3 catches for 66 yards, one of which was a 24-yard diving touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. I just feel like Shedeur was always looking for him. Shedeur loved to find him, and they connected early and often. So look out for Wester. I imagine he's kind of, I don't want to say he's going to replace anyone, but I do think that maybe Jimmy Horn or Travis Hunter may not always be the favorite target for one Mr. Deion Sanders. So that was my first observation. The other one, offensive line starters. Now, obviously, they went out and landed a few more offensive linemen over the weekend, which I'll talk about on the next segment. But the offensive line is something that we were all focused on. It's something that everyone wanted to see. Who was going to start? How are they going to do? Were they going to hold up? Were they going to be like last year? Is it possible to replace your whole offensive line and be good? Well, so far they look decent. The starting line, as I noticed, was Jordan Cine at left tackle, Tyler Brown at left guard, which that's a pretty big deal for Tyler Brown, who was kind of shafted by the NCAA last year. He was someone who transferred in from Jackson State and didn't really get an opportunity to play because he was a multi-time transfer, and the NCAA did not give him eligibility or did not grant his waiver this past season, which was unfortunate for him. But now he has a year of experience at Colorado under his belt in a way. He got to work with the team, got to work with Power 5 level guys, and now he's starting, or at least he looked like he will be. Hank Zelinkas at center, who I think went up against, I forgot who it was. They went up against him. I think it may have been Shane Cokes in the one-on-ones, and Hank won. Hank was doing real good. So Hank Zelinkas, look out for him. I thought he did quite well. There was no botched snaps that I saw. And then Justin Mayers, the UTEP transfer at right guard, and then Khalil Benton was starting at right tackle. So the offense line performed well. I only noticed Shedeur get sacked, or what would have been a sack one time, where it was like glaring, like that would have been a sack, and it was actually Jordan Seaton who gave it up. I do think that they're going to be a work in progress, but the offense line looked much improved. I think there's a lot of room to be confident in this group. They were able to get the run game going a little bit. And speaking of the run game, I know a lot of people weren't expecting there to be a run game. I myself wasn't expecting there to be a run game. And they went out there and trotted out Isaiah Harge, a defensive back who was a fill-in, sort of like, hey, we need a body at running back. Yeah, he went out there and had a 40-yard touchdown, which was the longest play of the day. And I kind of think he should stick at running back. I really do. Obviously the offense line were getting they were opening up some rushing lanes, but they were getting some chunk plays in the rushing attack. So pretty big deal if you're a Colorado fan, considering they were struggling to run the ball tremendously last year. And now they have a few options at running back, which I'll talk about the other ones a little bit later. The second offense line, Phillip Houston, Tyler Johnson, Yakiri Walker were the guys that stood out to me. I thought Tyler Johnson would be a starter. So obviously, he's got some room to grow, but those were my first sort of notes. The offensive line starters, the rushing attack with Isaiah Harge. I feel like maybe he finds a spot at running back. And then Wester, he's someone who I think is going to emerge as a star. Let's talk about the defensive line starters. Don't know if this is going to be set in stone by any means, but it was Samuel O., Amari McNeil, the Tennessee transfer from last year, and Quinn Barnes, the Alabama transfer, 6'5", 315, big bodied. And then also Shane Cokes got the start. Don't know if Shane starts, but hey, he did have what was kind of a strip sack on Walter Taylor, knocked the ball out of his hands. Obviously, they weren't allowed to touch the quarterbacks, but he did quote unquote, strip sack Walter Taylor. So that was the defensive line starters, which I thought was interesting because I honestly thought there would be no guys from last season starting, and there was two. So we'll see if they can hold on to those spots. In terms of the starting defense as a whole, Travis Hunter was at the nickel, which means he's going to be in the middle of the field, and teams won't be able to really take him out of the game by not targeting his side of the field. So that'll be interesting. The two safeties were Shiloh Sanders and Cameron Silman Craig. No surprises there. The corners, Preston Hodge, DJ McKinney, both got the nod. I feel like they both had some bright moments. I feel like they have really three talented corners, three guys that could be starting corners at any program in the country, and they're all there. So that's a big deal. Linebackers, it was Levante Bentley, which Jeremiah Brown didn't start, but he made quite a few plays for the second unit. Taj McCoy was the other linebacker, and then Trevor Woods. So those were the starting linebackers, or the starting defense as a whole. I feel like they did quite well getting pressure on the second team quarterbacks. It was Walter Taylor. No, it was Ryan Staub, then Walter Taylor, then the Wade twin. And I didn't see anything really that impressive. The Wade twin actually had a really nice throw over the middle. But other than that, when it was 11 on 11, I was a little like, oh, there's a big drop off between Shedeur Sanders and the backup quarterbacks, which, I mean, that's to be expected. I think realistically, Shedeur was, I think, 10 of 14. Yeah, he was 10 of 14 for 116 yards and a touchdown. Didn't really see much from the other quarterbacks, all that much. And I don't know if you're really expecting to see a lot from backup quarterbacks, but it would have been nice to sort of be like, you know what? Ryan Staub took a major step here. He's going to be the guy. Don't think that was the case by any means. I think there's a lot of room to work. I think there's a lot of room to kind of grow that backup quarterback spot, which with more time and more opportunities with the rest of the team, they're going to get that. But those were my biggest observations from the spring game. You guys comment below what you think. Also, got to give a special shout out to Charlie Offerdahl. Was put on scholarship finally by Coach Prime. Coach Prime said he was the MVP of spring. I think he deemed him before the game. Charlie wasn't able to play due to injury. So shout out to Charlie Offerdahl getting that scholarship. You guys comment below what your biggest takeaway from the spring game was. When we come back, we're going to be talking about all the commitments that Colorado landed this past weekend because it was a big weekend in the recruiting and the transfer portal. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, or hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their new unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot panico machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at the Locked on Podcast Network. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We are talking about commitments galore because Colorado got quite a few commitments over this past weekend, starting with Charlotte linebacker, former 4-star linebacker at Michigan, who had quite the role for the Wolverines in 2022 or 2021, I believe. Played in 13 games, started 6. Was kind of someone that they expected to be a starter for them, and then he ended up entering the portal, ended up at Charlotte. Now he comes to Boulder, where he could very well be a starting linebacker, and he very well could be someone that has a key role for this defense. He talked about in an interview with On3 that he just needed a chance to he wanted to play an NFL scheme, and Colorado has NFL coaches all over the place, or not NFL coaches, and guys that played in the NFL or coach in the NFL. They're all over the place, and they have an NFL scheme that really appeals to him. So that's why he picked the Buffs over a school like Arkansas, who he visited this past weekend. They also landed Rashad Amos from Miami of Ohio. Started his career at South Carolina. He's a running back. I think he comes in and is probably going to push Dallin Hayden for that starting spot realistically. He rushed for 1,000 yards and like 13 touchdowns this past season on 5 yards per carry. Pretty big get for Colorado, whose running back room was looking very weak, I guess you could say. Now they have Hayden, they have Amos, they have Michael Welch, they have Charlie Offerdahl, who I don't know if he's going to play a lot, but they have him. They have Isaiah Harge, who could probably get in the mix there. So wouldn't be surprised if they go out and get another running if they feel like that's needed. But the running backs, they got another one in Rashad Amos. Wyatt Hummel, offensive lineman, played center at Villanova, played in over 30 games at Villanova, thousands of snaps played for him. Pretty big deal. Colorado needs a lot of experience on the offense line. They need depth. I think their second team offense line, which obviously it's not too surprising that they were getting pushed around by the ones, did not look good. So they go out and get him. Then they land the Hood brothers. Colton Hood, former 4-star out of Auburn, I believe was his ranking. Played a little bit for Auburn this past season, not a lot, but he's not a rental. He's someone that, or he was ranked as a 4-star, 373rd player in the country. Chose Auburn over Michigan State, Arkansas, Clemson, notable programs like that. Comes in, will have a chance to be developed, will have a chance to sort of step into a reserve role and be that next guy up behind McKinney or Hodge or Hunter, whoever it may be. So they needed some depth there. They landed his brother too, which I thought was a nice surprise because they also landed another running back to add some depth to the room. So he's a 3-star. His name's Brandon Hood. He was going to be a preferred walk-on at Georgia and decided to take a scholarship offer to Colorado. He's a speedy guy. He had offers from Tennessee, Kansas State, Boston College, Coastal Carolina this past season. He exploded. He's really good. He runs track. He tore his ACL in 2022, still ran for 484 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1,300 yards. And as a sophomore, 8 touchdowns. So he's fast. He's got everything that you want in a running back. He's compact, 5'10", 185 from Georgia. So Coach Prime goes out, gets another running back. So they have more depth in that room. I like what they're doing in that room now. It was a little worrisome prior to the season or prior to the spring game, excuse me. And now I would say I'm a little confident or comfortable in that running back room. Then they go out and land three high school commits. Montrez Walker, linebacker out of Buford, Georgia. He was the one that kind of caught me off guard because I know he's been flirting with a lot of different schools, even though they had the crystal ball projections for him. He's someone who I was like, where is this guy going to end up? 574th player in the country. I feel like he could probably rise to a 4-star eventually. Picked Colorado over Stanford and Michigan, where he was previously committed, and plays at Buford, Georgia, which is a pretty big program down there in Georgia. So he was credited with 54 tackles and 54 tackles, and 4 tackles for a loss this past season. They also landed a 3-star tight end by the name of, went off the page for a quick second there because they landed 3 commits, and you got to give them all their shine. They landed Corbin Lazier, tight end out of Tennessee, 6'5", 225. They could probably use him right now. They need more help at tight end. That tight end position was looking rough. Didn't see anything special out of anyone that played in the spring game. And the headliner of their class so far is 4-star corner Alex Graham out of IMG Academy, former Detroit native, 244th player in the country. Pretty big deal. Colorado's making moves in the recruiting game, in the transfer portal game. They're not done yet either. They're going to bring in talent, whether it be on the offensive, defensive side of the ball. They're going to make more moves in the transfer portal, in the recruiting ranks. You just got to stay tuned. Have a little faith in Coach Prime. And a lot of people were getting on him for his 2025 class falling apart, but now it seems like it's coming into place. So that's going to be interesting. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a couple departures, headlined by Dylan Edwards. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA, and baseball's in full swing, and it's also playoff time in the NHL. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We got a couple key departures to talk about right now. Colorado loses defensive back Omarion Cooper. That was broken while I was recording earlier, and tough loss. I thought he was going to kind of contend for a safety spot or a corner spot. Didn't really work out. He started a handful of games for Colorado last season, had some errors in a handful of games, but he played pretty solid. You know, for someone who was a starter at Florida State and kind of lost his role, I feel like the same thing was happening in Colorado. He's going to look for a new opportunity to finish out his career. But let's talk about Dylan Edwards. So if you guys didn't know, Dylan Edwards he committed to Kansas State. He's transferring to Kansas State, which is the school that he was initially committed to before flipping to Notre Dame, before he flipped to Colorado. So he's teamed back up with his longtime friend, Avery Johnson, a quarterback, and they now have one of the more dynamic duos of rushing attacks in probably the country. But you look at, I think everyone's kind of talking about this. Colorado's 6 games. So they have a bye week after UCF, and then they welcome Kansas State to town. They're going to be taking on Dylan Edwards. Now, I think a lot of people are kind of upset with Dylan Edwards for leaving. At the end of the day, he wanted to play in a system and probably wanted to play a little bit closer to home. He wanted to play in a system that he felt was best for him. I don't know what the issue was in Boulder, but obviously you don't want to have to deal with someone that's not happy. And I don't know when he became unhappy, because he was obviously the featured back, and Alton McCaskill transferred out because he was the featured back. Michael Welch, even though he was shining, I still feel like Dylan was someone that Coach Prime really loved, and I think that he was still going to have a big opportunity. But nonetheless, they lose him. I still think he's the biggest loss of the Coach Prime era, regardless if it's Jackson State or Colorado. And he's going to be now a Big 12 foe for Colorado these next couple years. What is Kansas State getting in him? I almost said North Dakota State. What is Kansas State getting in Dylan Edwards? Well, fastest guy, arguably in the country. He runs track for Colorado. They're getting someone that could do a little bit of everything. You could use him in the run game. You could use him in the passing attack. Kansas State is notorious for small running backs. They have Darren Sproles. They have Deuce Vaughn. They know what they're doing with the undersized running back. Maybe that was a factor as well. But Colorado loses him. They lose Omarion Cooper. So now I look at their transfers because I like to update this. The number was at 11 in terms of guys that I think they lost that were going to be contributors. Now it's at 13. Dylan Edwards is another one. And then Omarion Cooper is another one. So they lost quite a few guys where it's like, would have loved to keep them. Those guys could have contributed during the season. Either way, I wish Dylan Edwards the best. I think he will do just fine back in his hometown, Kansas State. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and I think that's okay. It's the same thing with Cormani McLean. Regardless of how well they played, sometimes people just want to change the scenery. Sometimes people want to return home. So look out for Dylan Edwards. I imagine he's going to do quite well for the Wildcats in 2024, and Colorado's going to have to figure out how to stop him. They're going to have to figure out how to use them. Now they have to figure out how to stop him. So it's going to be one of those interesting matchups to say the least. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs and making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. I'm going to keep talking about all things position battles, new additions, each day they come. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow.